Was Harmon Smith too hard on Toby Fox? In the wake of the Deltarune Parts 3 and 4 reveal and the Switch 2 Direct, we all saw that. Yes, he went way too far, so I'll be responding to his attempted takedown today. Because I admit it, the Deltarune reveal at the Switch 2 was pretty excellent for reasons we're going to explore right now. So we're going to start in part 1 of this video by establishing who Harmon Smith is. In part 2 of this video, I will identify the places in which he was too hard on Toby Fox, trying to take away his accomplishments and undercut Toby's credibility as a game designer and a figure in the video game community, especially doing a lot of composition work for many different games outside of Deltarune and Undertale. And finally, in part 3 of this video, I will be delivering Harmon Smith his sentencing, which will specify what he needs to do in order to atone for this situation, which involves a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black, as you'll see in this video, starting right here in part 1, where we're going to identify who is Harmon Smith. So Harmon Smith is a failed author who also has a YouTube channel where he's basically talking trash about his opinions. And look, I can get the angle of a trash-talking YouTube channel. It's really just at a starting point in the spirit of schoolyard debates at recess at elementary school. You come out into the schoolyard at recess, you're talking with your pals, and you're debating whether N64 or PlayStation is the best console and why. As a starting point, that is the core angle of Harmon Smith's YouTube channel. So while I do support this art form as a general premise, I do think Harmon Smith takes things too far, bordering on toxic, in a way that his commentary is sometimes not constructive, not really providing, and it just sometimes feels like him trying to make himself feel better by tearing down other people's accomplishments. That being said, I can give Harmon Smith credit for being honest and his willingness to talk on camera. All of his videos are unedited, he's on screen the whole time. He does get credit for that. There's a lot of people who cannot bring themselves to even think about doing that. Harmon Smith dunking on things in the wake of the Switch 2 Direct, it's enough that I'll listen to hear what he has to say. So you're going to hear more than one clip of what Harmon has said about Deltarune and Toby Fox, and you may wonder, Alex, why would you even platform these thoughts? I will strongly suggest that you do not go to his channel or comment, backlash, or otherwise. Do not reward him with traffic and engagement. As far as platforming something he said, the reason is because, although he, as you're going to see, he does seem to be playing it up for exaggeration to try to trigger people that don't agree with him, the fact is, the core of what you're going to hear him say are thoughts about Toby Fox that have been floating around the community even before this video. So even if Harmon is being somewhat disingenuous, the sorts of things he's saying are commonly enough beliefs held in the video game community that I do feel a reasonable mandate to respond to them, because look, I've done critical reporting about Toby Fox in the past, and I want you to understand that I am only ever constructive in those moments. I would not dunk on someone just to try to tear away their accomplishments. And I also would not go ad hominem on Toby Fox ever. I made the Undyne Music Theory video for a great many reasons, supported by the quality of Undertale the game. So without getting ahead of myself, brace yourselves. We're going to hear where Harmon Smith's mind goes in response to the rather epic real-life annoying dog reveal at the Switch 2 Direct. Here we go.
It needs to be said. It absolutely 100% needs to be spelled out in black and white for all of us to see clearly, to understand that Deltarune is absolutely one of the most chilled games in Nintendo Direct history. I feel like it's every couple of directs that we see something related to Toby Fox in some way, whether it's an announcement that he's working on Little Town Hero, or that he's in Pokemon, or that some Undertale thing is in some rhythm game or something. It's just unbelievably cringe and a waste of everyone's time, right? Because nobody cares.
All right, so Harmon is here trying to frame this as, oh, Nintendo is shilling all of Toby's projects. They really want gamers to get into this or that Pokemon game. So through Harmon's perspective, he's watching these Nintendo Directs and thinking that Nintendo is desperately trying to foist the Undertale brand on all gamers. That's a totally unnecessary way to frame the situation. If Toby Fox has shown up in more than one prominent Nintendo Direct, that's not so much them trying to sell you on the idea of Toby Fox's games, but rather it's a rather brilliant and effective way of enjoying the synergy with Toby's existing existing fans. Die-hard Undertale and Deltarune fans, it's a big, exciting event whenever anything officially related to Toby Fox appears in a direct. So that is actually not Nintendo desperately trying to sell you Toby Fox's stuff, but it is rather benefiting from the widespread enthusiasm for Deltarune and more. That's Nintendo benefiting, getting more attention on their direct. Because if Toby isn't an official reveal like that, word about that is going to get out. And that's just more eyeballs on the direct, as well as all the other games in the direct. So Nintendo is not desperately trying to sell you something. They are rightly riding the momentum of Toby's success. And I say that not in any kind of cynical business strategy. Nintendo has embraced Toby, and with very good reason. Toby absolutely deserves to participate in all the different things he's contributed to.
And I think that's really important when, like, talking about why the game isn't culturally significant, why it's not a big deal, why you shouldn't respect it, and why it's just such a travesty, and why it needs to be condemned. You know, Toby Fox has no talent. He plagiarized all his soundtracks. He's never been able to produce a good game. Undertale was trash. And over the past decade, he's failed to put out the follow-up. You know, the episodic Deltarune, which was supposed to be like this thing that would capitalize off of Undertale's success, and it didn't go anywhere. It never became popular. It never took off. And yet, for some reason, every couple of weeks, we see Toby Fox, you know, like making some statement or saying some things, trying to become noticed, you know, like, oh, I met Sakurai. Oh, I'm interviewing Yoko Shimomura, and then I'm going to talk about my own projects. Oh, I met Shigesato with Toy at his business. Oh, like it's just a shameless self-promotion that doesn't actually focus on what's actually important when it comes to creative endeavors.
All right, time out, Sugar. This just seems to be raging jealousy. I'll be the first to say that Toby Fox is a wonderkind. He's absurdly talented, and even if I was disappointed with some of the things that I learned about things that were used and lifted to be used in Undertale that didn't really belong there, although those are problems, I've made it very clear that is not an ad hominem nullification of Toby's talents. Undertale is a remarkable game. I will always applaud how effective Undertale is working within its means to tell an amazing story that's captivating in its presentation. I look at just as an emblematic example, Monster Kid in Undertale, everything that's involved with Monster Kid and the way his story plays out, like hats off. That's so amazing. And when I first played Undertale, I didn't fully appreciate the depth of what was going on in the game because I didn't want to do any pacifist stuff. I was like, what's the point of playing a video game if I'm just going to look on a wiki every time I want to figure out how to pacify this or that battle opponent? So I just went through attacking this or that person and got to the end, and I'm like, okay, that was kind of random, but kind of enjoyable. All right. But then when I was going back to do the Undyne music theory video, I played a lot more of the game, did a whole lot more of the pacifist stuff, and then it just clicked. I was like, oh, now I understand what Undertale is, what it's going for. And yeah, you can say that some of it is derivative. I was disappointed to figure out how many things were lifted, from example, from like a game like Brandish. But by no means am I saying that Toby Fox is a fraud. Toby Fox is most certainly operating on a whole nother level. And even if I am disappointed by the performance-enhancing drugs that were used in compositions such as Spear of Justice, I strongly disagree with Harmon Smith's sweeping way of saying, oh, he plagiarized the whole soundtrack. There's no reason to believe that he plagiarized everything in the soundtrack at all. There's no reason to believe that he's just some big total fraudster. He may have an uncredited involuntary collaborator or two in the music, but it's not like that is totally carrying the identity of the soundtrack. And I sincerely do not believe that Toby's like really trying hard to impress everybody and trying to bring more and more people into his game design environment through the different announcements on Nintendo Directs or talking with Yosho Shimomura. At most, I can acknowledge that as a public figure, I sort of wish that Toby used his prominent position and power and influence to do more. It's his prerogative to be totally back behind the curtains, but I kind of wish that we heard from him more often of like, oh, look at this awesome collaboration I did, look at this interview. But where I will defend Toby is that Toby is not trying to like pander to the entire gaming community, take over gaming and, be entered into the full Parthenon pantheon canon of like Nintendo game developers. I think it's as simple as a game like Earthbound means everything to Toby, and any way he can rise to the ascent of prominence that he can actually participate in Nintendo projects or other game developer company projects, I think that means everything to Toby. He is not doing it because he wants to impress the entire world. He's just concerned with his people, the people that he came up with in the Tumblr community, Earthbound, Homestuck. He has his people. He's found his audience, and that means everything to him. I don't think Toby Fox has ever striven to be like the most famous, popular, influential. It's not about that. That which I always suspected about Toby's design philosophy can be confirmed in his own words. In a recent Deltarune FAQ, Toby Fox was quoted as saying, and I quote, "Thanks for taking an interest in this game. I don't believe my game is for every person, but to a certain type of people, attuned a certain type of way, this game can reach a meaning beyond its appearance and find a shape in your heart. Even if there's just one person that feels that way, I will keep making this game to grow by your side. See you again soon." That confirms what I gleaned all along, that Toby has found his audience, he's established his creative voice, and he's connected with a great many people attuned to his frequency, and I honestly get the sense that he considers that the most important paramount W. And if he can expand his resume with Pokemon or this soundtrack or a Sega rhythm game, I do think that means a lot to him, but it's not this insecure scramble to like impress as many people as possible. I think Harmon Smith's framing it that way is just coming from a place of jealousy.
Fox is utilizing his resources and his connections to LARP as like some American game like guru, like walking around Japan, like interacting with other people in the industry, like pretending he has like these deep relationships with them and that he's like this really popular like super celebrity. He's not, and that's very apparent if you like actually see what these people have to say about him.
So what? Toby had a great conversation/interview with Yoko Shimomura. I don't think he's ever tried to portray himself as someone who jaunts around Japan being an in-person participant in that culture. Look, in our modern gaming development environment, a lot of this stuff is done remotely. And when I think about this concept with Sonic composers, it can be very easy to look at some of these prominent Sonic composers, especially ones outside of Japan, and think like, wow, they're in cahoots with Sega now. They're like with the in crowd. They're one of those insiders. But I could just as easily imagine that if you're outside of Japan and you're working in some capacity on like a Sonic project, that could be a superficial perception where it is actually kind of a lonely experience. Like, I could imagine being in the spot of someone contracted to do music for a Sonic game, and you're thinking to yourself, like, wow, like, I'm actually participating in an official Sonic project. I'm, like, legit now. When in reality, although that is perfectly true in some way, it's not like you're now a card-carrying employee of Sega. You're just doing this remotely from your home country. You might have a couple of emails with Azuka or the person sound directing the game, and then you do your piece, and everyone else in the community gets to find out about what you contributed. But when I look at someone like Bentley Jones, a Sonic composer who's worked on 1 or 2 games, it doesn't mean that he like hung out at Sega offices in Japan or America. He could just be doing his thing out in Wyoming and submitting his song submission through Dropbox. When I think about what happened to Bentley Jones with a game like Sonic All-Stars Racing, he was brought in to do some music for that, but then Richard Jacques pretty much cut him out of it. Did everything he could to exclude him from the project. And this is all remote work. There's no one necessarily to talk to except maybe send an email to one person at Sega and hope for support, which he didn't get any support. They left him to just deal with Richard Jacques' concerted effort to exclude him. He's left to fend for himself. So whenever I see folks rise to position of prominence where they get these collaborations, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're in with the in crowd. And I'm not even downplaying Toby's involvement with Nintendo staff, but again, I think this is just Harmon Smith's jealousy projection, and his sentiment is common enough that I do feel mandated to respond to it and debunk it. Even if every collaboration Toby has ever done was just a quick Dropbox submission and maybe one or two back and forth emails, maybe throw in a Zoom call to top it off, so what? That's on a level way above anything Harmon Smith has ever done. Now we're going to get to Harmon Smith's more direct observations on the Nintendo Direct, with the rather epic and shocking real-life Toby Fox annoying dog reveal. Here we go.
Now, with this Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, it really needs to be said that the long-awaited Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 are coming out on Nintendo Switch Day 2, Day 1. Clearly, this was planned out in advance by Toby Fox. Clearly, he wanted to insert himself in the Nintendo Switch Direct so he would get noticed and people would talk about him. And what happens? He gets overshadowed by a 5-second clip of Silk Song. You know, like Toby Fox had this entire spot announcing new content for Deltarune available on Switch 2 Day 1, clearly aping to be like the big major indie release of the early Switch era, and it's not going to happen. You know, nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to care, nobody's going to play it, you know. It's going to get overshadowed not only by all the other games coming out on that platform, but all the other ones that already exist. You know, Fox doesn't seem to realize that, like, a lot of the Switch 1 eShop is carrying over into the Switch 2. You know, he doesn't seem to realize that he's competing with all the other indie games that are on the Nintendo Switch.
So first of all, Deltarune is not trying to be this big next mega indie hit necessarily. Deltarune will accept any success it achieves beyond the fan base that it's grown already, but it's not seeking to outdo Silksong or be the talk of the town in the entire video game community. I already provided you that Toby Fox quote. Instead of trying to scoop in a super wide audience, Deltarune is catering to a niche in the same way that Metroid Prime games, or even Metroid itself. Not everyone's into Metroid. You look at the sales numbers, you know this to be true, but the reason why Nintendo sticks with Metroid, tends to give you a new installment, a full experience game of Metroid, is because Metroid is a big enough deal to enough gamers that it will be the thing that pushes those gamers over the edge to buy the Switch 2 console. I know that Deltarune is not exclusive to Switch 2, but one thing you can say is that the Switch 2 version of Deltarune is definitely a killer app for Toby Fox and Undertale completionists, who understandably want to get all official releases of the game. Now, Harman brings up the point that the Switch 1 eShop is fully accessible and available on a Switch 2. However, what you failed to discover, Mr. Smith, is that there actually is a little bit of Switch 2 exclusive content in the upcoming Deltarune version on that machine. There will be a boss that utilizes the mouse controls of the Switch 2. So even if that's just, like, you know, a small targeted bit of exclusive stuff for the Switch 2, that's still freaking awesome and epic. The idea that there would be a new separate boss that uses those motion controls, I give Toby credit. He was doing his thing, putting his vibes and frequencies out into the universe, and now he gets to be in the Switch 2 Direct compilation forever. And again, it's not that Toby is trying to use the Switch Direct to inflate his accomplishments. Nintendo is benefiting from Toby. Nintendo wins big to bring in all those Deltarune fans to support Toby by buying a different version of the game, which is not just a port. I mean, it's fair enough to say that most of what you see in Undertale and Deltarune could probably run on an SNES or N64, but the Switch 2 mouse control boss, even if it's not a super big important part of the game, that's still, I give Toby credit as a symbolic embracing of the Switch 2 and Nintendo. So as we now close in on part 3 of this video with the sentencing, I think we've debunked enough of Harmon Smith's sweeping statements and oozing, seething jealousy that we're ready now to enter part 3 of this video, in which I will now be delivering Harmon Smith his sentencing, which will specify what he needs to do in order to atone for this situation. Harmon Smith, I hereby sentence you to specify the sales numbers of your book, Because for all the trash talking you do to try to undercut and tear down Toby's accomplishments, could the comparatively low sales numbers of your book that is plugged in the description of every video you upload, could that explain the underlying jealousy where Toby is clearly relishing this moment as he rightly should, celebrating a massive W for Undertale and Deltarune fans, moving forward into this next generation of gaming, and you just see it as a Toby Fox, hey, look at me, right? But if you're calling Toby a fraud or a failure, you should have no reservations disclosing your book sales, because I think once those sales numbers are disclosed, it will put your resentful backlash into a bit more context. And look, although I disagree with the extent to which Harmon Smith goes too harsh and too counterproductive, I can at least give him some credit for being honest, providing takes and angles that maybe people wouldn't have necessarily noticed or connected the dots on. So I'm not saying that Harmon Smith's channel is totally bad or worthless. I find it interesting enough as food for thought to just listen to when I'm doing things around the house or exercising or whatever. And I do give him credit for his candor and his bravery. However, I did feel the need to respond to Harmon Smith's commentary here and put it in context, because when some hardcore Deltarune fans come to my stream and give me a hard time, I worry that they see me in the same bucket as Harmon Smith. So I will use this occasion to now and again make it crystal clear that I would have not made the Undyne video if I didn't enjoy Undertale for what it is and have a good positive experience with it, which, you know, is somewhat complicated by the unfortunate things that I discovered about its assembly, but in no way is that a grounds to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Toby is a force of nature. He's super talented. I give him so much credit for Undertale, and even if Deltarune has taken too long, I think most of his fan base understands that for something so specific and so personal, these things take time. So my commentary on Toby Fox in the past, while critical, has never been an ad hominem takedown, because if I shared Harmon Smith's sweeping negative opinions, then I wouldn't have bothered making any public comments about Toby Fox. The reason that I did is because I care enough about the game. I care enough about its quality and the people who enjoy it and look up to Toby and the entire Deltarune brand. Basically, my angle has always been, we have a great thing going here. Let's make sure that we don't overlook some missteps so that we can defend the integrity of the community, of the game itself, and so that the millions of Undertale fans who very rightly look up to Toby Fox for inspiration and cues, let's just make sure that all of us in the viewing audience walk away with the correct takeaways. So this has been Alex Yard here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone. Get your mouse controls ready, because that exclusive boss is waiting for you. Do you guys think that the new realistic version of Toby's annoying dog is going to get like a spin-off TV show with webisodes? It could rival that Pac-Man episode of Secret Level, the game version of which will also be available on the Nintendo Switch 2. Place your pre-orders, people, but look out for them tariffs. Good evening.